Welcome everybody. So, despite Lufthansa not playing along, we have a great crowd today. So thanks for coming. Thanks for coming over from the messe, for those of you who came over from the messe. What I'll do in the next 5 minutes is I'll set the scene for some of the topics that we'll then deep dive into in the rest of the evening. And in order to do that, I will do what you call a fast forward, right? And what some people that are a bit cooler than I am call an FF, right? So fast forward to the point. So let's fast forward to this year compared to what we saw last year when some of you attended this meeting. So what happened in this past 12 months? 3 things happened, 3 areas of change happened. The first one was the demand changed. The second one was the supply, and several of you here saw quite big changes. And we go over some of those. And then finally, there were some news, what I call the trump card effects that impacted the industry and impacted the supply landscape over the past 12 months that had very little, if anything, to do with the supply. So let's go through those. And let's start with the demand. As Tom showed you, things are switching from the second platform into what IDC calls the third platform. This means, in general, a massive growth in the number of users, the number of consumers of your technology, the amount of data that needs to be managed, and the amount of devices that are out there in the market. A lot of this growth is driven by consumers, but also increasingly, and Tom was hinting to this, a lot of the growth is actually driven by new applications, new ways of using this capacity, this storage, these compute resources. So this is demand that's changing. And I guess, maybe let's do a raise hands here. Who here wasn't involved in a presentation with the name involved in the word digital in the past year? Raise hands? Okay. Seems like everybody was pretty active last year. So that's good. Digital was the big topic in 2014 at the end, and in 2015 throughout the year. And there were new usage examples that we saw happening, new cases driving different ways of consumption of infrastructure. Maybe the one I'll point out here is this bank, is a Polish bank called Idea Bank, and perhaps some of you have read the news. But really, what they did, they created a mobile platform that allowed their business customers to really summon an ATM, a cash machine, to their site to either withdraw money or cash in the money. And they did this with a mobile application, but the mobile application, of course, needed to feed back into a core banking system. So that's a typical example of what you call digital, right? And some of these are pioneering examples, some of these are more real examples. So really, demand changed. But demand was not the only thing that changed. In EMEA, including Ethernet switch, server, and disk storage, we have a market that's worth around $23 billion. That's what we estimate for this year. Now, this is a fairly big pie. And there is a number of companies that have been working and eating this pie for a long time. But there are new companies that have started taking a seat, sitting at the table and starting or trying to eat it. Some companies from the storage space, some companies from the cloud infrastructure space, some companies from the software-defined storage or hyperconverged space. And again, I'm just taking some examples. There are way more companies than this that have entered the market significantly in EMEA this past 12 months. So what did the incumbents do? The incumbents reposition. They had to take a new position in the market. And these are just some of the examples. I guess everybody was aware of these things happening, certainly. And we believe this is just the beginning of some of the large changes that we will see in the supply landscape in 2016 and potentially even in 2017. So repositioning, that forces repositioning, that forces repositioning. So this is how the supply changed. Also, in terms of sizing, and again, Silvia will provide a little bit more insights in the storage specifically, but this is combining storage, network, and servers. And clearly you see that compared to last year, because of all of this repositioning, some of the position changed. Some of the large players switched position. Some of the new players went from zero to a decent portion of the market. And again, we believe this is not going to happen only in 2015. At least in 2016, we'll see significant change again. The final factor that I want to mention here is the fact that it was not just the IT that changed. There were several aspects such as regulation, data protection, safe harbor, call it what you want, is not in our hands. It changed the IT market, and it will change the IT market. Oil price went up, went down, crashed, stabilized, grew a little bit. Not in our hands. It impacted the IT market. Exchange rates. I guess several of you guys had probably targets set based on the exchange rate or regardless of the exchange rate. And that certainly made somebody's lives easier or harder. Right. So where does all this bring us? Changes in the supply, changes in the demand, changes coming from outside the IT world. It brings us to this big decision point. Cloud or a rethinking of the traditional infrastructure. This is where everybody, from a customer perspective, is now forced to take a decision. And what are the three key aspects that we need to consider here? The first one is workload dependency. Andreas will talk about big data as a key workload here, and will give us some ideas of what that means from an infrastructure perspective. Software is gaining in importance in how you define your infrastructure. And Archana will talk a little bit about software-defined storage and how storage is being changed by software. Cloud, clearly we mentioned, this is the base now, it's a de facto now. Carla will talk about this. But certainly the key point is making sure that we keep up with these trends. Right? These are some of the things that we at IDC and EMEA are working on currently in terms of research. They touch several of these aspects. We have special studies running now and in the process of being completed around hyperconverged, software-defined, infrastructure for big data. And you'll get some snippets out of this in the next few presentations. We're looking at flash, and Silvia has done a lot of work in looking at and sizing the flash market. We're looking at purpose-built backup. We extended the coverage on the cloud infrastructure side. And we are working on adding hyperconverged to the way we track the market. So we have to, these are all new things that we weren't doing 12 months ago. And we had to pick up the pace and do. Just to give you a rough idea. So now that we talk about this, let's make sure we get the fundamentals right. And the fundamentals is storage. Now I'll ask Silvia to come up and talk to us about